Welcome to the Coupling Podcast. I'm Jefferson.
And I'm Megan.
This is episode 2, and today we're going to talk about our 2019 goals and resolutions for the new year, and really how we're starting to organize our life. How are you feeling about this?
I feel good about this. I don't know. I know most people don't like resolutions, but I don't know. I kind of thrive on them a little bit. I don't know. I feel like I'm a very goal-oriented person, so I don't know. I think this is a cool challenge to do. And I think this is the first time that you and I have done it as a couple. I think that we've always had our own individual resolutions, but now this year, like us combining our resolutions, I think was really fun.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think resolutions kind of get a little bit of a bad rap, primarily because a lot of people make them very drastic changes in their lives. Like, I didn't go at all to the gym in 2018, but now I'm going to go 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and it only lasts for maybe the first few weeks, at most maybe the first couple months. But I think our process, our plan moving forward with our goals or resolutions for 2019, I feel like we really have a structured process in place and plan for executing and being successful. And kind of along this podcasting journey, where we hope to revisit these goals and our progress towards them monthly at least, to be able to reflect and evaluate how we are progressing and meeting those goals and resolutions. So let's go ahead and talk about our process. So we have a 6-step process for resolution success. And so just to highlight them briefly, 1 is to identify a goal. 2 is to define success. 3 is make a plan and hold yourself accountable to that plan. Number 4 is to then, of course, you need to live your life. 5, evaluate. And then 6, reflect. And so evaluate is really the objective measurement of how you're progressing towards your goal. And 6, reflect, is how do you feel about that? So what is your thought on that process? Do you think that's a reasonable process to identify and hopefully stick to a goal and make it successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think having a, process of how you're evaluating your goals is really important, because I think a lot of times people are just like, oh, I want to lose weight. Oh, but how? How are you going to lose weight? How are you going to make that happen? What's your plan? So I think us, coming up with, specific steps to, achieve our goal is going to help us in the end be more successful in, completing it.
Yeah. So we have what looks like here about 7 goals that we've outlined for 2019 in different areas of our life, but for the purposes of this podcast, as well as these resolutions, they're things that we do together or things that we both affect. Is that pretty close to what you'd say there?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is work out 5 times per week. So why did we identify this as a goal? Why is this important to you?
Why is it important to me? Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I said about like the weight loss thing. I feel like I've always said like, I was like a New Year's resolution, I want to lose like 10 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever. Just because I think that that's like a typical, like goal for especially females to make. But I really want to make it more about my health and my body. I guess the way I look at it is, my body is not a car. When it gets old and run down and things break, I can't just take it in and replace it. I have this body for the rest of my life, so I want to be good to it. And I think that, working out five times a week is, a good goal for, making my body stronger and being more fit and just being better to myself.
Yeah, and just to give everybody an idea of where we're coming from when we say our goal is to work out 5 times per week. Last year, we pretty much consistently worked out on average probably about 2 or 3 times per week. So this is not a a goal that we're saying we're going from 0 to 60 or 0 to 5 times a week. We're actually going from about 2 or 3 times a week to about 5 times a week. So just trying to at least get to the gym or go out and run or whatever we're planning on doing as our workout that day, 5 times a week. And I think we identified that primarily as Monday through Friday. If we do anything excess on the weekend, then that's kind of a little bit of a bonus. But I really think that the biggest thing for me working out 5 times a week is that I feel so much better when I do go to the gym, even if it's for like 20 minutes, half an hour. I don't need to go for a full hour oftentimes, but just getting out of bed, starting my morning early, and getting to the gym really helps me feel better in the long run, and I feel like it makes me more productive during the day.
I agree.
And so how are we going to define success with this goal?
How are we going to define success with this goal?
Yeah, so going to the gym 5 times a week, I mean, it's kind of right there in the title. So we're going to track, did we go to the gym every day?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we'll talk a little bit later about how we're specifically doing that, where we're recording all of this information. But yeah, we're going to record, did we go to the gym today? Yep, mark it off with an X, or nope, leave it open. Importantly, how we're not defining it is we're not defining it as I need to lose 20 pounds. We're really looking at it incrementally and saying I need to go to the gym today. So that's something I can do right now. I can't lose 20 pounds right now.
Right.
Okay. And then what we're hoping is that looking back over the past month to 3 months, we can see incremental improvements in how we look, how we feel. Maybe our weight, we go ahead and track that separately, but that's not going to be a marker that defines this goal as successful. We're going to actually track how often we make it to the gym.
Right. I mean, I think those are all, ancillary things centered around it, but the doing it 5 days per week is going to help. Like you had mentioned, we went about 2 to 3 times a week, which is good. I celebrated the fact that we were able to get our butts up every morning and, do that at least 2 or 3 times a week. But I think you and I both thought, like, could we be doing better? Yes, we could. We could be taking care of ourselves a little bit more. So, yeah, I think it's a good goal for us.
Yeah. And then make a plan. So I mentioned that we are planning on going every morning. Okay. You don't have to go every morning. You can go in the evening if you have a long enough lunch break and you want to and you want to go in the middle of the day, or you work from home and that's something you're able to do. Just make it a habit. Try to turn it into something that you do on a consistent enough basis that you'll almost remember to do it subconsciously a little bit. You'll think, oh, it's time to go to the gym. Just says it's time to eat dinner or time to brush my teeth. That kind of thing.
It's etched out into our schedule.
Yeah.
It's a part of our day. Like we have aligned time every day, a certain amount of time to go to the gym. So it's not really we've made it not an option. It's what we do. It's what we have to do. It's on our docket for the day.
Yeah. And then the last 3, live, life, evaluate, and reflect. We're still in January here, so we haven't really had too much time to go ahead and look at this, but hopefully we're going to be tackling those last 3 steps in the process monthly moving forward. And so let's go on to the second goal. So eating out once per week. So why did we identify this as a goal?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to a little bit to the overarching theme, which is like health, trying to be healthier, being more cognizant of what we're putting into our bodies. And I think that throughout the year, when we kind of reflected on, 2018, I think we realized we were eating out way too much, way more than we probably should. And I think a lot of that was convenient, but I think we realized that in the long run, it's going to be better for our health if we, set aside time to come up with our meals throughout the week. But we obviously don't want to deny ourselves of, treats here and there. So we thought, one week is one time a week is, a good marker, I guess I want to say,
It's a good
or
goal, yeah.
good goal for us. I mean, so that we're not completely depriving ourselves and saying that we can't ever eat out, we can't ever have like, bad food, because that's just not feasible. We're never not going to have well, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. No, we definitely want to still kind of have a treat every once in a while. And we decided for ourselves that every once in a that every once in a while was going to be once a week. Previously, we were probably eating out on average maybe 3 times a week, at least a meal here or there 3 times a week, which I think we really want to cut back, not only for health reasons but also financial reasons. I mean, we can definitely afford to eat out more, but if we have that money saved, it can go a lot further for other things that are more important in our life, necessarily than going out and eating. And so again, kind of defining success with this is going to be, we're going to track it. Every time every day we don't go out to eat, we're going to go ahead and mark that as a win. And then every day we do go out to eat, we're going to go ahead and leave that box empty. And we can look back at the end of a month and say, hey, are there 4 empty boxes? Are there 6 empty boxes? And see how many times, how many weeks we were successful in that goal. And then make a plan. I think this is really important for this one. And Megan, you I think kind of took the lead with this in planning out our meals that we were going to make at home, making sure that we were going to eat all of our leftovers, things like that, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I've always been a really big like meal planning person. We always tried to plan our meals all last year. I think that we were a little bit more lax on some of that. So, I've really been trying to be good about planning almost every meal that we have a day, up to 5 to 6 meals per day, so that we're not getting off track.
Yeah. And then our diet, I think that kind of leads right into our diet. So goal number 3, intermittent fasting diet. So we identified that we needed to eat healthier. I think both, and this kind of goes back, this kind of collates number 1 and number 2 a little bit and says, okay, this is kind of the third prong approach to being healthy just overall. And so identifying a diet was really important to me that didn't necessarily restrict the foods I was able to eat. Because I really think that dieting is and eating healthy is really all about moderation. Of course, there are some certain foods. I mean, sugar, I think, is the biggest one that we really do not need a whole lot of in our life. And the only benefit of sugar is really to make us happy for that split second while we're eating it. Mm-hmm. And so if there are other ways that we can be happy without eating sugar, I think that is a much more positive way, much more healthy way of consuming food and being healthy. With that said, I think every once in a while, again, you can have a treat. Moderation is key. And so that's really why I think I gravitated towards this intermittent fasting, is because ultimately what we're doing, and intermittent fasting, I think, is the key word right now these days, but ultimately it's just cutting out breakfast. We still have coffee in the morning. Or
really any meal, as long as it's within like your window, which is, I think, well, I mean, if you wanted to explain intermittent fasting a little bit more, or do you want me to?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I mean, basically it's fasting for 16 hours of the day and only eating within an 8-hour window. So it helps you kind of cut back on calories.
Yeah. And I think the biggest, not only cutting out breakfast, but I think the biggest thing that helps me feel better when I wake up in the morning is stopping eating at 8 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. So I'm not constantly going back to the pantry and saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to grab a bowl of chips, or I'm going to grab a few crackers, or I'm going to grab that bowl of ice cream at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And so that's I think, really, really important. And again, we're going to track this on a daily basis to be able to define, okay, did we eat within our time parameters? And then on the flip side of that, within that time, we don't really restrict all that much we're eating. We just try to eat until we're full. And I think we're paying a lot more attention to serving sizes. Mm-hmm. which is really helpful. Like the other day we had some pasta, and that for me is a food that I really can get in trouble with pretty quickly because I just want to keep eating and eating pasta when in reality, the serving size, although it looks small, it does fill you up. And I did feel content afterwards. I wasn't like hunched over so full I couldn't do anything. But at the same time, I wasn't hungry. My stomach wasn't still growling and things. So I think that was the biggest benefit for me in the intermittent fasting. Okay, moving on to number 4, travel once per month. And I think this is probably the one that we're most excited about because this is so up until this point we're trying to restrict bad things, and now I think this is something that we're trying to promote a good thing.
Yeah.
So why is travel important for you?
Well, I mean, I think you and I both have a very adventurous spirit. We really love traveling. And I think that was one of the reasons that we fell in love, I guess, is that we both realized early on that we like to travel, but also that we travel well together, which I think is a crucial part of the relationship. Can you travel with your partner? And yes, we can. Not as to say that we never fight or disagree or anything, but I think that for the most part, you're kind of my buddy, my travel guy. So.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I think that's where you really learn to be able to travel well together and really learn how to communicate with each other, because you do get in some of those arguments and you're still locked in a car for another 8 hours with that person. So you can only like be mad at each other for so long before you end up just working the issue out, which I think is kind of what happened a little bit with us, especially in the beginning. Everybody in the beginning of their relationships have some growing pains and
well, you're learning about each other.
And so really trying to travel once per month and keeping track of how often we're traveling and where we're traveling to. And it doesn't need to be, we're going to travel internationally once a month, because that can get real expensive real fast. Like coming up in February here, we're planning a big trip to Japan to go snowboarding, which we're super thrilled about. But at the same time, we realize that since we have this huge trip, this really expensive trip coming up in January here, our traveling is going to be about an hour away to go do a brewery tour. So I think kind of in 2 months here, we span the whole difference between kind of a day trip to go do something that we think is pretty fun, but it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. It just costs the gas to get there and maybe a few beers. And then in February, we can go ahead and treat ourselves to a much larger trip. And I think we have a couple more trips planned so far through March and April to go do a couple things that we really want to do here in the United States. And so we'll probably talk about that on later podcasts and some of the traveling we're doing and things. But yeah, I think we're really kind of into adventure and want to explore.
We just want to see new things, you know? We want to be open to life. And I think you and I both realized last year that even though we did travel quite a bit to a lot of places, we did kind of get stuck in our own little bubble at home where we got kind of complacent and like, let's not go anywhere. Let's just kind of sit on the couch and hang out. And we were not traveling nearly as much as when we lived in Idaho, where we would travel sometimes 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah, well, especially in the winter months.
Yeah, for snowboarding and stuff. So we kind of want to get back to that, but within a reasonable, manner. And so we thought, traveling 1 time a month to explore something new together as a couple would be a good goal for us.
Yeah. So that kind of moves us on to our 5th goal, which is incorporating more date nights. And I think this isn't just even more date nights, because right now it's just us. So a lot of people might look at that and say, oh, every night is a date night because you don't have to worry about kids. You don't have to go to a kid's soccer game or take them to ballet or something like that, which is very true. And I definitely recognize the how fortunate we are to just be us for right now and how we can grow our relationship that way. But I think really the date night portion is expanding beyond our comfort zone together. And so, for example, something that we're going to be doing next week, or actually when this podcast comes out, we would have already done it. But we're planning on going to a sushi making class. So we're going to go kind of learn how to roll our own sushi. And I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like you said, trying to be, more unique and being together and growing together, doing different things. I think this kind of goes back to the whole thing where our typical date nights were, sitting on the couch and maybe watching a movie, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just that I think that we were kind of feeling a little bit complacent in our relationship in those ways and not maybe necessarily getting outside of our comfort zone and exploring those other options.
Yeah. And so I think this is a good step, and it'll make sure that we really kind of grow together, I think.
Right. And maybe we'll find a new hobby or something together on the way.
Yeah. Or new skills or something that we can incorporate.
Skill,
maybe we'll learn how to make sushi and make it for dinner a couple of times.
I mean, you can't really go wrong, right?
Yeah. And so define success. So incorporating more date nights is not that specific of a goal, but I think what we're going to try to do is jump out of our comfort zone once a month.
Right.
And so whatever that may be, and hopefully monthly we'll be able to share that with you and tell you how everything goes with that and give you guys some ideas at how you might be able to expand your relationship with maybe something different than just going out to a dinner and a movie or something like that. Okay, so goal number 6 is more intimacy. So why is this important? So this is an interesting goal, I think, because at baseline we are very different in what we need, I think, and so we identified this as a goal, and really we've been working at this over the course of our relationship, and I think we've done a really good job at kind of going from maybe our two extremes to meeting somewhere in a happy medium. But do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think like you said that you and I are very different people when it comes to, I guess, what we consider like intimate or loving one another. I am, a very, very loving, like touchy-feely person. And so a lot of, I guess, my not how I define like our love with one another, but I guess how I feel about our relationship is tied into our physical connection with one another. And I think maybe, well, I know that you feel less so that way. You're not a very emotional person like me. And so you don't think of those things as much as being, intimate. So I think we're just both trying to find, like you said, a happy medium where we can both be happy, where we're, my side of helping the emotional, like more loving, intimate side with your, I'm a robot. No, just kidding. A non-emotional side. How can we like make that happen? How can we meet in the middle so that we're always, working on our relationship and, making that better in that realm of our lives.
Yeah. And I think defining success here is really just acknowledging those moments that we are being physically affectionate and those moments that we aren't being physically affectionate or being affectionate in some other way than physical contact, and trying and by acknowledging those different times that's happening, I think we can kind of get to a happy medium where we can identify kind of this works and is wonderful for the both of us.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
And then goal number 7 is kind of the opposite of more intimacy. It's definitely more objective, but definitely very important as well. And it's finance. So basically we want to save some money, and that's primarily for a down payment on a house.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is really important for me. And right now we have the goal of saving for a down payment for a house. That may or may not pan out. We might use it for something different if something comes up along the way. But really having a savings can really make your life a lot more comfortable. You don't need to worry about paying the bills paycheck to paycheck. You might be able to weather a storm for a few weeks, a month, a couple months, depending how much you have saved up, if something were to unexpectedly happen, which I think is really important. Right now, we definitely have a little bit saved up, so we would be okay for a little bit, but I think having a larger sum of money saved would definitely put some of our stress at ease when it comes to some money things. And so the primary goal why I think we want to do it now is because we are starting to look at taking that next step. We just got married about 6 months ago, a little less than 6 months ago, I guess. And so we're thinking about a family. We're thinking about buying a house. We're thinking about where we want to kind of spend the bulk of our life. We've up until this point, we've really moved around quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So buying a house up to date or up to this point, really for either of us, hasn't really been too much of an option. We talked about our background a little bit on the last episode, and we've both been moving around quite a bit in the past, 5-10 years. So really now kind of settling down, focusing on, okay, do we want to buy a house or do we want to keep renting? And I think we identified that we definitely want to kind of start moving in the direction of looking to own a home and potentially raise a family and things like that.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think you can never go wrong with tracking your finances. And I think that we have a habit of like blindly, buying things or, spending our money on things that aren't necessarily, things that we need. So we're just trying to be more cognizant of how we're spending our money and making sure that, we're really only using it for things that we need and, limiting our wants in a way, not saying that we can't buy anything that we want or that we like, but just really trying to justify needing or wanting something in order to, cut back on our frivolous spending.
Yeah. And so we're gonna go ahead and try to track that. We're gonna try to save a specific amount of money each month, so that way, at the end of 6 months, 12 months, we can look back and say, yes, we were able to save this bulk of money, and really trying to put the money away first before we have a chance to spend it. So that brings us into how we're going to go ahead and track these and really making a plan and sticking to it, to all of these goals that we've identified and really holding ourselves accountable. And so I'm going to kind of throw this to you to start off because I think you've really you really dove into the practice of bullet journaling much more than I have, or at least have started before I did.
Right. Yeah. So I guess for those of you that don't know what bullet journaling is, I would highly recommend you look up the inventor or the maker of the bullet journal, which is Ryder Carroll. Basically what it is, it's what the name says, journaling, but it's, it's more than that. From what Ryder Carroll describes it as, it's more of like a mindfulness technique as well as a form of increasing your productivity in life. So it's basically a shorthand way of tracking tasks, events, things of that nature throughout the days, weeks, months, and year. So I started bullet journaling kind of towards the end of 2018 and got into it and thought it would be a good idea for us both to do starting in 2019. And it really is the main way that we are tracking our 2019 New Year's resolutions. We're taking that bullet journal and tracking basically everything that we do in order to make sure that we're successful with our New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. And so bullet journaling is really pretty much taking a blank notebook and turning it into the planner that works for you. Something that I found over the past, 5-10 years is that kind of the traditional planners work about 50% for me. Oftentimes I find, there's not enough space here, or there's too much space there. And since they're already structured for you, it's really hard for the journal to be flexible with how you are using it. And so that's kind of why I always gravitated away from journals and really kind of try to do my own thing, whether it be Post-it notes, whether it be pieces of paper that I just wrote to-do lists on that I kept on my desk. It really wasn't the most organized way of capturing these tasks, ideas, events, appointments, meetings. And so when I came across the process of bullet journaling, I kind of immediately dismissed it as like, this is going to be another thing I can't do.
Yeah, it's just a waste of my time, but
yeah. And so the one thing I will say, though, is that setting it up does take a little bit of time. Obviously, since you're starting with a blank notebook, it has the flexibility to be whatever you want it to be, but that means that you need to identify what's important to you. And so I think this is kind of what you did at the end of 2018, is really started doing it and saying, well, what do I want my bullet journal to be? What would serve me the best from a functionality purpose? And then once you get that down, then you can take a look at your bullet journal and say, okay, how do I make it look pretty?
Yeah.
And so I think so the other complete end of the bullet journal, as far as the aesthetics and what it looks like, we were watching Amanda Rach Lee on YouTube in her YouTube channel, and she has the most fantastically artistic and most aesthetically pleasing bullet journals, and I think she's been doing it since 2017 maybe.
Yeah, they're amazing. Check her out.
Yeah, and in order for me to do something like that, one, I don't have the calligraphy skills, so I would need to build those up. But two, just the amount of time she puts into it. I mean, she does this kind of as her full-time job, I believe, through YouTube and Instagram and things. But definitely, she was able to show us all of the different possibilities, not only from an aesthetic point of view, but also a functional point of view. She has many different spreads, ideas like habit tracker ideas, so that way we can go ahead and track our goals or maybe any other habits we want to start to incorporate into our lives. And so I feel like the continuum kind of starts with the most minimalistic setup, which is also the easiest and the least time consuming, which is Ryder Carroll's, and at the very least, learning the process from him, I think, is super important, because the basics will lead you throughout the whole process. And then going all the way up to maybe Amanda Rach Lee, who doodles and draws and uses many colors and has a color scheme for each week and things like that. And so trying to find our kind of happy medium, we're definitely starting, I feel like, on the more simpler side. Particularly me, I think I'm definitely on the simpler side and probably will stay on the simpler side. Versus you, I think you were able to kind of get a much more aesthetically pleasing looking book than I do, or journal than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like that whole like creative part of it, but I'm definitely like nowhere on the end of the spectrum of Amanda Rach Lee. I'm probably somewhere in the middle of like the minimalistic Ryder Carroll and Amanda Rach Lee, and maybe just a little bit farther on the end of the spectrum of Amanda Rach Lee than you are.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that kind of brings us to a close of this podcast. But we just wanted to share with you what our resolutions or goals were, and our kind of outlook on what a resolution really should be for the new year for a couple. And then also wanted to share how we were actually going to achieve, track, reflect, and evaluate how we're achieving these goals and then their success. So. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, just keep a lookout, because we're gonna be talking about this throughout the year, going back to our resolutions on. Did we say monthly basis or every 3 months?
I think monthly.
Yeah.
At least in the beginning, maybe if it gets to be like we're being a little bit too repetitive here in the first few months, then maybe we could push it out to 3 months. But I think maybe we'll first try to talk about it once a month, maybe the first podcast or the last podcast of the month, and we can kind of figure that out as we go. But if you follow along, you'll definitely hear how we're progressing with achieving our goals, and I think that'll also help us stay true and on course and on the path to success for that. Well, thank you for following along. If you liked what you're seeing or hearing, please go ahead and subscribe on either YouTube or iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on YouTube and you'd like to receive notifications, go ahead and click the notifications bell. And if you have any comments or questions for us, go ahead and leave a comment below. Otherwise, have a good day.
Bye, guys.
See ya.